Oi, gente, boa tarde. Só queria dar uns avisos do credenciamento. A checagem do credenciamento muda a cada turno, então eu vou pedir para vocês depois darem uma passada lá no credenciamento para eu ler o QR Code de vocês de novo para confirmar a presença do turno da tarde. E as palestras agora de tarde elas vão ser em inglês e a gente está tendo o fonezinho com a tradução, né? E se vocês quiserem, é só ir ali fora pegar, que as meninas... precisa levar um documento físico, né? Que as meninas vão guardar e no final, quando vocês devolverem o fone, elas devolvem um documento. Aí quem não tiver o documento físico, só mostrar o digital e assinar uma ata. Obrigada.
Boa tarde. Daremos início agora, né, às conferências da tarde, do período da tarde. E eu vou chamar agora o professor doutor Alberto Rutia Moldes. Ele é engenheiro e bacharel em construção, autor, consultor, pesquisador e professor na Universidade de Westminster.
Thank you very much. I have to say first that I will be reading a speech that I pre-prepared because my dyslexic monkey brain needs some structure. So I have to do it in order to maintain the focus on the points. Well, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for being here today. I'm really deeply grateful for the generous invitation to contribute to this important conversation about how we design, manage, and think about prisons. This is not only a discussion for architects, planners, and policymakers, but for everyone who care about justice, equality, and social well-being. I would also like to thank the organizer of this beautiful event for bringing together such a diverse range of voices. It is through collaboration and shared experience that we can start creating more constructive and human environments. The purpose of this talk is to explore how prison environments have evolved, what the psychological implications they carry, and where opportunities for improvement lie. Prisons are often viewed only in terms of punishment and control, but evidence shows that the spaces themselves have deep and lasting effects on mental health, behavior, and prospect for change. So their design and operation is more than technical matter. They are central to the effectiveness of and the fairness of the justice system. So let's start. The history of prisons, their architecture, and their effects on prisoners is as old as humanity history itself. The purpose of the prison in the ancient world and the medieval period was largely to serve as places of temporary detention for the accused before trial, for the condemned before execution, or for the debtors awaiting repayment. The true punishment were exile, corporal mutilation, or death. The idea that imprisonment by itself can constitute punishment was not always the prevalent view. It is rather a modern innovation. As Foucault observed brilliantly, penal reform marked a shift from inflicting pain on the body to exercising control over the soul. The evolution to imprisonment as punishment and to the design of purpose-built prisons mark a profound shift in penological philosophy. Italy, or should we say the group of independent states that today we know as Italy, were at the forefront of this transformation. However, this evolution unfolded at a very slow pace. One of the earliest examples of this evolutionary movement was the design and construction of the new prison of Venice. Opened in 1566, it was a sophisticated design at the time. The three-story building was created with an intricate network of narrow corridors where cells were differentiated by prisoners' crime and wealth, and specialized areas were conceived for women. The prison design also included an infirmary, a courtroom. Cells were originally dark with small holes in the walls for ventilation. However, later was added greater windows for light and proper ventilation. The mid-16th century witnessed the emergence of a particular type of institution that was called the Houses of Correction. The Catholic Church, unsurprisingly, contributed to this experimentation. In 1582, Pope Clement XI established a house of correction for juvenile in Rome. It was designed by Carlo Fontana and called House of Corrections of Saint Michel. The architecture itself was significant. Exterior windows admitted light through glass panes, a rare luxury at the time, and the inner apertures provided sidelines to the altar as a physical manifestation of the union of confinement and spiritual instruction. Work, prayer, and silence structured the young inmates' lives. The first house of correction built in England was the London Bridewell in 1556, soon followed by Oxford, Salisbury, and Norwich. Here, work was conceived not as a punishment alone, but as a means to instilling discipline, regularity, and usefulness. The influence of the House of Correction extended to Germany, Scandinavia, and Belgium. By the 18th century, prison reformers increasingly embodied the Enlightenment conviction that rational architectural design could reform human behavior. The Maison de Force, opened in 1775 in Ghent, captured this spirit. The prison octagonal layout, made out of trapezoidal blocks, was designed to separate inmates into distinct categories. At the time, it was celebrated as a model institution. However, this architectural innovation met a new vision of punishment. However, its success was quickly undermined by mismanagement and overcrowding, and the project scale and ambitions marked, nevertheless, the beginning of a new era in which architecture became a tool for reform. Nevertheless, these early architectural developments were still exceptions to the norm. Most early prisons were essentially mixed-use, where debtors, felons, families, and visitors coexisted within little architectural separation. In these prisons, the design itself led to disorder. In the 18th and 19th century, this era witnessed an extraordinary proliferation of prisons across Europe and America, partly due to the decline of the use of capital punishment and transportation. This idea of sending people to colonies, prison colonies, like in the case of England was Australia, or in the case of Portugal was Brazil. But also because of the growing public demand for rational solutions to crime. Architecture becomes central to this endeavor. The prison building itself was conceived as a machine capable to produce behavioral change. In England, in 1791, Jeremy Bentham proposed to the Parliament the idea of the panopticon. A design consisted in a circular structure with cells in the perimeter and a central tower where prison staff could observe in 360 degrees the movement of all prisoners without being seen by them. The design ensured that prisoners will never be certain if they were being watched or not. So, through the belief that they were under constant scrutiny, they would auto-control their thoughts and behavior with a minimal intervention of prison staff. Discipline was to be achieved in this experiment not by force, but through the mere possibility of observation. Despite having succeeded in the parliament, Jeremy Bentham's panopticon was finally rejected by King George III as a totalitarian project, and it was never realized in its pure form in England. However, his idea deeply permeated the English penal reform. Radial plans, star-shaped layouts, and polygonal structures proliferated, trying to balance surveillance, separation, and economy. The first major experiment in England was Millbank Penitentiary in 1816, whose polygonal design represented both rational planning and the central government authority. It was enclosed by an octagonal wall covering about 65,000 square meters. In the central, there was an hexagon formed by the inner sides of 6 surrounding pentagons. It was the first prison in England to contain a chapel, staff quarters, administration offices, an infirmary, and a laundry, among other services. Each pentagon includes 6 wings of 36 cells. In total, the prison had more than 1,000 cells. But there was only one shared toilet area by floor. Each of these 6 courtyards had a 3-story watchtower for surveillance. During the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, across Atlantic and in the North American colonies, 2 distinct architectural philosophies, the Auburn style and the Auburn system and the Pennsylvania system, emerged as competing models for prison design and regime. The Auburn style or system was the system of the silence. The building had stacked levels of small cells where prisoners slept alone at night. During the day, prisoners were escorted in silence to communal workshops and dining halls with constant supervision to prevent communication. In contrast, the Pennsylvania system embraced total isolation. Its design features a radial plan with large vaulted cells where inmates lived, worked, and ate in complete solitude. Despite their shared ambition of reformation through architecture, both models ultimately failed. The Pennsylvania solitary confinement system caused severe psychological harm, leading to breakdown, depression, and hallucinations. The Auburn system collapsed under intense inmate rebellion and the strong labor union resistance to the use of prison labor. In England, in the 1830s and 1840s, architectural debate mirrored the American controversies. The competing disciplinary regimes, the silent system and the separate system, produce distinct architectural responses. However, Pentonville Prison, which is in the screen, which was built in 1842 with a radial layout and isolated cells designed to enforce solitude, inspection, and moral reform, represented the triumph of the separate system. The prison chapel, designed with partitioned seating, exemplified the effort to control even the spiritual life of inmates through architecture. The architecture and regime of this new prison embodied a moral philosophy, which was that solitude will lead to penitence. In practice, nevertheless, it leads far more to insanity. In continental Europe, different approaches were adopted. Belgium and Germany, for example, adopted the solitary Pennsylvania model, while France experimented with fortress-like prisons whose very exterior projected terror. What united these various experiments on both sides of the North Atlantic was the idea that the built environment is designed correctly would induce repentance, obedience, and moral reform. By the 20th century, the dominance of the radial and panoptic designs began to decline, although many of the English prisons remain in use today. Post-war prisons across continental Europe often resemble barracks and campuses rather than fortresses. Scandinavia, in particular, purposed the principle of normality, which is designing prisons to mimic ordinary life as close as possible. In 1970s and 1980s, the federal prison system in the United States developed a new system based on independent unit or pods to house a small number of inmates under permanent surveillance. This was the direct supervision system, also known as the podular architectural system. In 1980s, however, punitive voices once again gained attention. In the United States, the supermax prison emerged with the promise of bringing social order through maximum isolation, technological surveillance, and censor deprivation. Inmates were now confined 23 hours a day in windowless cells and with virtually no contact with others. Predictably, the psychological consequences of supermax prisons were devastating. Depression, psychosis, and emotional collapse were endemic. In the second half of the 20th century, England also oscillated between reform and regression, while newer prisons such as Doncaster introduced a triangular housing unit and brighter interiors, trying to adapt the American podular system to the British prison culture. The persistence of overcrowding and rigid regimes undermine their humane aspirations. Meantime, in the global south, governments recklessly imported architectural design from England and the United States with little or no understanding of the operational philosophies behind those systems. So far, despite efforts to improve the design and operation of the prison, imprisonment as a human experience has long been synonymous of degradation, humiliation, and the intentional denial of human dignity. With the prisons, within the prison walls, the most basic aspect of civilized existence, privacy, independence, and body autonomy, have been systematically denied. Individuals must numb themselves to constant indignities and sacrifice part of their humanity to protect a fragile core of sanity. The statistics speak plainly. No one who has endured a serious term of imprisonment emerged untouched. Confinement alone almost always leave psychological scars. So at the dawn of the 21st century, the international community began asking what to do to prevent people sent to prison from becoming psychologically damaged and socially alienated. The answer was most likely drawn from specific cases that demonstrate it could be done. Scandinavia and European countries like Austria or Netherlands were under the international radar for their low level of recidivism and what was considered highly humane prison systems. In Scandinavia, for example, Norway, Sweden, and Finland adhere to the principle of normality, which state that life in prison must be as normal as life outside. Additionally, prison systems in these countries are highly permeated by the participation of social and communal organizations and other public services. As a result, the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, published in 2018 a report called To Our Humane Prisons, which introduced an innovative model of prison development based on 4 core principles: do not harm, maintain a minimum of normality, promote health and personal growth, and maintain strong connections to the society. The first of these principles, do not harm, is the basis of a modern, civilized, and humane prison system. Whatever the system does, it must at the very least ensure that custody does not worsen individual pre-existing psychological or physiological condition. In prison design, harm frequently arises from architectural and environmental shortcomings. Design features that contribute to avoidable harm include the denial of privacy, poor air quality, poor noise control, inadequate light, the use of disturbing vision patterns, and misunderstanding of the psychological impact of architectural layouts. Too often, a lack of awareness among prison designers of even disregard for how design choices affect the daily life of those inside result in inadequate prison environments. And centuries of experience have shown that neglecting human needs in a prison, in any country, in any prison, invariably will result in more expensive, unstable, and dangerous places to manage over time. So, what are the current trends and innovations? The international move to our humane-centered rehabilitative design reflects a recognition that environments have a strong influence on psychological health and prospect for reintegration. Researchers from Australia, for example, argue that prison environments possess causal properties which can either support or undermine rehabilitation. Those properties include the capacity to satisfy psychological needs to foster the development and transfer of skills and knowledge, and to enable positive identity transformation. Architectural decisions such as whether spaces allow choice and personalization, whether learning environments support engagement, or whether social spaces promote trust and dignity, directly affect those processes. Even modest spatial changes can enhance autonomy and create conditions for desistance. A key framework that has been applied to newly designed prisons is the salutogenic approach. The salutogenic or salutogenesis shift attention from the disease and disorder to health creation, asking how prisons, buildings can promote health behavior, reduce unnecessary stress, and enhance coping capabilities. Contact with nature and natural light are increasingly recognized as health enabling. Dominique Morin demonstrated a clear statistical link between green spaces in prison and the well-being of both inmates and staff. By analyzing data across the prison state in England and Wales, the study reveals that a higher proportion of green spaces correspond with statistically significant reduction in self-harm, prisoners on prisoners violence, and assault on staff. Light is equally critical. Both natural and artificial light directly influence mental health. Limited access to daylight and reliance of inadequate artificial light disrupt circadian rhythm, affecting sleep, mood, emotional regulations. This disruption is linked to depression, anxiety, aggression, and even suicidal behavior. Now, a significant paradigm shift in prison architecture is emerging. One that integrates a wide range of disciplines, including public health, psychology, neuroscience, physiology, and landscape architecture, to produce environments designed for human well-being. The following are just two of many contemporary projects that serve as example of modern architecture in prison and the new approach to penal design. The first one is Halden Prison in Norway. And I want to, before show the pictures, I want to prevent you that we will see here in the pictures is not luxury, is what is the normal environment of a middle-class living condition in Norway. So, Halden Prison is often cited as a global benchmark of humane prison environment. It has a village-style layout that copies life outside prison. Buildings were spread out on purpose, so prisoners have to walk between different areas, similar to moving between home, work, and leisure, keeping the sense of normal daily routine. The landscape preserves natural features, integrate greenery, and balance security with a restorative environment. Inside, the design promotes openness, light, and human scale areas. They doesn't have cells, they have rooms of approximately 10 square meters, equipped with TVs, desks, mini fridge, ensuite bathroom, and vertical windows without bars that allowed the view and access to natural light. Inmates kept and used their own keys and to lock and unlock their rooms' doors. Of course, officers have the possibility to open or close the rooms whenever it's needed. But they're giving the inmates their responsibility to maintain their own privacy. The rooms are arranged in clusters of 12 with shared kitchens and living rooms designed to feel like home, encouraging social interaction and community living. The design is based on dynamic security, where staff are encouraged to build rapport with inmates and participate in meals and recreational activities to foster trust and safety. The second example is the prison of Mas d'Enric in Catalonia. It represents a critical rethinking of prison architecture. The prison is a wide, low complex of connected buildings set around many courtyards, and the buildings were rotated in 45 degrees, so every facade received good sunlight and daylight. The layout creates an interior main street with an urban atmosphere designed to feel like everyday life instead of a fortress. Topographically, the complex is carefully built into the landscape, giving view of the surrounding woods and the distant mountains from both the cells and the courtyards. So what are the opportunities and why we must improve? So far, we have seen how the history of prison architecture have been marked by cycles of reform and regression, by experiments that promise dignity but often deliver suffering. We have also observed in the contemporary cases that prison designed with attention to human well-being can transform not only daily life of people in custody, but also for staff. So to answer the question, why must we improve? Let us first recognize that the need of improvement is not abstract, it's urgent. Around the world, prisons remain environments of humiliation and degradation. Overcrowding, poor ventilation, harsh living, harsh lighting, and lack of privacy all create conditions that intensify psychological harm. These are not minor inconveniences. They are factors that contribute directly to mental illness, to aggression, to despair, and ultimately to suicide. Improvement, then, is not about being indulgent. It's about being rational and responsible. This is also a matter of public security and sound economics. The cost of poorly designed prison is measured not only in human suffering, but also in the burden placed on healthcare system, welfare programs, and law enforcement when people are released and prepared for reintegration. The first opportunity lies in recognizing that architecture can directly reduce harm. Daylight, fresh air, and green spaces are health and security intervention, not luxuries. They improve sleep, mood, and behavior while reducing violence and stress. Another opportunity lies in embracing the principle of normality. The idea that life inside mirrors life outside as closely as possible. This will allow us to preserve skills, autonomy, and social ties, easing the transition to release, and reshaping the role of staff toward support rather than control. Improvement is necessary not just because of the present inmates suffering, but because prisons are long-standing structures. Many of the 18th century prisons, even here in Brazil, are still in use, shaping life for centuries. If we continue to build facilities that degrade humans, the damage will persist far into the future. So the opportunities are substantial. By rethinking prison architecture, we can move from institution of humiliation to public services that protect dignity, foster health, and support reintegration. The evidence is strong. The principles are clear, and the benefits extend beyond prison walls to the safety of communities. Why we must improve? Because the alternative is no longer an option. We cannot continue perpetuating harm, wasting human potential, and endanger our society by releasing individuals more damaged than when we received them. Improvement is not optional. It's a moral duty, a social necessity, and an investment in a better future. Thank you.
Obrigada, professor Alberto. É interessante a gente pensar um pouquinho quando ele vai falando, né, sobre essa reforma penitenciária, e a gente fica pensando como se reformou, e a gente não chegou a lugar nenhum, né? A gente continuou mantendo mantendo a prisão do século XVIII, XVII, XVIII como, né, como sempre. A gente só muda a narrativa, mas os espaços continuam os mesmos e a sociedade também continua praticamente a mesma. Dando sequência, eu queria convidar o professor César Côncio III, professor doutor das Filipinas. Ele é professor da Universidade de São Tomás, na Faculdade de Arquitetura, lá de Manila, nas Filipinas. A Universidade de São Tomás é do século... Sim, é católica, a Universidade Católica, ela tem quantos anos? How many time? 18? The old of the school, yeah. The university of 280? 380, okay. So please, professor, come here.
Thank you very much for inviting me here again, Suzanne. I have fond memories of Brazil. I was last here in 2007, though in the province of Paraná, due to the program of the Rotary Exchange. And here I am now, speaking to an esteemed audience on a very important topic on prison design. Okay, while waiting for my presentation, um, a quick um, story of what I'm wearing. So this is part of my presentation. This is an official, how do you say this? This is a typical formal wear in the Philippines. It's called Barong Tagalog. And the history of this is from our colonial past with Spain, wherein due to security reasons to prevent the locals from rebelling, they had us wear a very transparent. So the original one is more transparent than this. So they could easily see if the locals were hiding weapons. And if you notice, even it's not tucked in, it's tucked out. So they can easily search and there are no pockets. But the one thing nice about what the Filipinos did is they transformed something repressive and made it into something celebratory and made it their own. So that will also be a topic in my presentation. Thank you for this. Here, yes. Okay, so the topic of my presentation today will be focusing on human rights and prison design and in the context of Philippine prisons. The background is I've been working with the UN in developing prison design concepts, ideas, generally based on the Mandela rules. And partly is I'm here also to explain the importance of the Mandela rules and all of the ideas that all of our esteemed colleagues have presented before me. So this is a very popular picture that became viral in the internet. So I had to pixelate it a bit, but this is basically all PDLs inmates sleeping on the floor because there were no more space for them to sleep in. And I could not say that this is unique. This has actually generally been discussed in the previous lectures that there is really a global problem of overcrowding. Okay. And what's interesting about this is this became viral around the world, and the prison officials and the local government unit of the Quezon City, where this prison was located, got embarrassed. And with that embarrassment, they decided to build a new, much larger prison. And because of that as well, this is another picture of the same old jail in Quezon City. So this is the winning photo of a scene inside Quezon City Jail, one of the Philippines' most overcrowded prisons. And this won third place in the photojournalist competition. So yes, after this, there was a push to complete the new mega Quezon City Jail. This one. Okay. So the new Quezon City Jail, mill dormitory, was envisioned. Very important is to highlight the word envisioned. Okay? As a jail facility that is aligned with the living conditions set by the United Nations, standards in the custody of its PDLs. So it promised, or it actually had a lot more space with the potential for 6,000 for housing, 6,000 PDLs. But, okay, there's a big but. It had the same operational problems as the previous jail. Okay? Because, same thing, with more space, larger space, they did not consider that also you had to need more manpower resources, And more importantly as well, they did not change the operational guidelines and how the space program was used from the old jail. And it's interesting how my colleague, my presenter before, also mentioned that in history they also tried this new jail, but because of operational inefficiency and mismanagement, the design failed. So same thing with this. So in actuality, when they transferred the PDLs to this new jail, they only were able to utilize a third of this facility because, again, of the lack of manpower. So same jail. And here's another unique thing about what happened with this jail. So editor's note. So this is in the news. An earlier version of this article reported the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, the BGMP, had already inaugurated the facility, but the Bureau said in a clarificatory release that what it held, the ceremony that was held, was a turnover ceremony, and that the inauguration and the blessing will be scheduled on a later date once the additional facilities were completed. What does that mean? It was, the push was more political. So they just had to open this because of the pressure of the viral picture of the overcrowded. So the pressure was there. But in the compromise of the actual purpose of the jail, okay, so they transferred the PDLs even without the necessary needed infrastructure. And you'll see this as another case study later on. So what is the agenda for building and designing jails? Another new city jail, the Mandaluyong City Jail, the construction of this 9-story facility with 24 detention cells tremendously reduced the congestion rate from 722%, which is quite common, sadly, to negative 835%, thus achieving a zero congestion rate, which is very good. Okay? Because again, the number one problem that we've all seen that's kept on being repeated is the overcrowding. Okay, so 9,873 square meters, 9 stories, will house some 2,000 PDLs. Okay, spacious and well-ventilated dormitories, kitchen laundry facilities, livelihood, recreational, multi-purpose areas, sports facilities, isolation and infirmary rooms, etc., etc., etc. But again, the question is this design, is this infrastructure effective in actually delivering what it was supposed to be? And a simple check already when the UN reviewed this. And the technical aspects did not pass because you see this fire protection pipe exposed right going through even the cells. And that in itself would give you notice that those who designed and built this were not prison designers, because that is an easy indication of a PDL that could easily hang themselves. Okay, so that was missed. Aside from the usual problem of it's the same operational manual, okay, same spaces that were never changed in how the prison officers would treat the PDLs, the day-to-day activities, so on and so forth. So the analogy that was used in all the meetings and workshops and all of these reviews of all of these new jail facilities was just like you have bought a brand new high-tech latest computer, okay? However, you just transferred, maybe for convenience, we don't know, maybe we're not a tech person, you just transferred the hard drive with all of its contents. From your aging, I'm not sure if you know what this is. Well, 486 XT Turbo okay, with floppy drive. Okay, so you transferred all your files into this, new computer, LCD, whatever, with all of its viruses, okay, fragmented files, etc., etc. Okay. So, same operational system, same files, programs, applications, same viruses, potentially incompatibilities of purpose, context, and agenda. And this analogy was presented in the first Philippine Prison Design Conference last March 2025. And I just had to include the picture of Suzanne, who was there as well. So thank you for braving the how many hours flight and the jet lag. Yes, I know. If we have time, I can tell more stories about her. Anyway. So one thing that came out with the workshop was that the new infrastructure, any kind of new infrastructure, should not automatically equate to just expanding the prison capacity to accommodate more PDLs. But yes, we also have to know that that is the primary and most pressing problem, but it should not be the only one. So going back, what is the purpose of prisons, as what I think Eduardo also mentioned in his research? And it should be a simple and guiding for everyone to move forward, to have just a simple and concrete and clear agenda. And for the UN, it's about being human. Okay. So, and what the UN proposes to have a clear agenda on jail designs and towards the treatment of PDLs or inmates is the Nelson Mandela rules, or the United Nations standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners. And we have a quote from Nelson Mandela that states that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. And what does this say is that society will judge the nation, and even us who are here, who are implementing the design, the treatment, the operations of jails. They will judge our country, our nation, our government on our jails and how we treat our prisoners. So jails can be said to be the physical manifestation of a nation's morality. And PDLs can actually be seen as today's lepers. It's a good thing that lepers have a cure for it, But I don't think we will have a purely 100% cure for inmates. Okay. So we will never run out of a job. No, just kidding. So going back to the Nelson Mandela rules, and these are very important preliminary observations. And for me, if you read the Nelson Mandela rules, it's brilliantly written, just because it's a very rare document to be written and agreed on by all of the nations of the United Nations. Imagine, and we've heard Hafa yesterday. He's the National Program Chair of the UN Office of Drugs and Crime in the Philippines. And he mentioned the process of how the Mandela rules were written and approved by the whole UN Assembly. Okay, so that's a very difficult, any kind of document that takes that many people to write and approve on and agree on, okay, must be well written. Every word must count. And we have here the first observation. The following rules are not intended to describe in detail a model system of penal institutions. They seek only on the basis of the general consensus of contemporary thought and the essential elements of the most adequate systems of today to set out what is generally accepted as being good principles and practice in the treatment of prisoners and prison management. Okay. And what's nice about this, it's number one, basis of the general consensus. Everyone must agree, the whole society must agree that this is a definition of what humanity means and how we should now treat our prisoners or PDLs. And the adequate system of today, as again, how my colleague presented the history of prison design, there were many innovations. And this states that yes, maybe there might be a better way. Okay? The today of tomorrow might be a better one. Okay. Observation number 2. On the other hand, the rules cover a field in which thought is constantly developing. They are not intended to preclude experiment and practices. And that's what we're doing now. That's why we are here. We're trying to get new ideas to potentially experiment in a good way. Okay? And seek to further the purposes which derive from the text of the rules as a whole. It will always be justifiable for the Central Prison Administration to authorize departures from the rules in this spirit. This is very dangerous. But what's nice about this statement is that it trusts us, or it trusts the central authorities to be moral, okay, and good, and behave, and have a humanistic agenda on, how we should be treating the PDLs or the inmates. So it does not bear the responsibility of this goal, because it's not the rules' goal to do this. It's really us. Now we go to rule number 1. So I hope I can make, there are 121 rules, so this is rule number 1. No, just kidding, I won't go through all of it. So just a few rules. Okay, rule number 1. All prisoners shall be treated with respect due to their inherent dignity and value as, again, a human being. And as what, the title of my talk now, the first, or one of the few words is context. We all have our own definition and limits of what humanity can be, especially when it means, when it talks about persons deprived of liberty. The safety and security, of course, of prisoner staff, service providers, and visitors shall also be ensured at all times. So what does this mean? We should not only focus on the inmates and PDLs. It's everyone that is involved with prisons, even the community itself, the society, the visitors, everyone. Here again, I made a picture, was able to put the picture again of Suzanne with the shadow and the microphone still. Okay, so this is again the first Philippine Prison Design Academic Colloquium. Okay, so this was done in my University of Santo Tomas College of Architecture with students. Okay, and the point of this is we wanted to ask the students what were their impressions of prisons and what were their thoughts of what prison should be. And then the most popular answer was same thing. Prisons should be there for punishment. Okay, it's not even for reform. It's not even for the prisoners to repent. It's to punish. Okay? That's what the students answered. The second is that this is a College of Architecture, so they wanted to design. So the other international speakers from Belgium, from New York, from Australia presented their very middle class designs. And then the students said, we're critiquing it. If you design a prison that beautiful, then maybe the prisoners would want to commit crimes, so they will be jailed. But the answer to that is when we call prisoners persons deprived of liberty, it is in our human instincts to value our freedom more than anything else. Even though you give a person, 5-star hotel Ritz complex, but he cannot leave the room. Every action is dictated by an authority. Sooner or later, he will miss the freedom of the slums. Of course, that's an extreme analogy. Okay? Another analogy is my visiting here. So I'm not sure if you know that the Philippines and Brazil is almost the opposite sides of the earth. And it took me, my longest flight was from Doha to Sao Paulo, or roughly 14 to 15 minutes. Sitting down, okay, in a cramped economy chair, not business class or first class, economy. Okay? Sitting down, there's nothing else you can do. Sit down, eat, go to the bathroom, sit down, eat, try to sleep. Okay? And it made me realize, this is not the environment of a prison, but I could not wait to get out of that plane. Okay? So it's very important to instill that persons deprived of liberty itself is well, in a way, punishment. Okay? Everything else should not be created as punishment. And another thing about that, when we say persons deprived of liberty, what is the liberty that we are depriving the people of, or the inmates of? The most common, of course, is freedom of movement. But what else? Is it freedom of thought? And in some prisons, I think in Singapore, they even do not allow the prisoners to do art or personal things in their cells. Okay? So even the deprivation of individual thought can be deprived. So there are many kinds of deprivation of liberty as well. So yeah, prisoners and persons should not be in better places compared to the outside. Rule number 4. We're getting there, okay? So the purpose of a sentence of imprisonment or similar measures, deprivation of a person's liberty, either primarily to protect society against the crime and to reduce recidivism. So it's not about to protect the society against the person. It's to protect the society against the crime that that person committed. And that means that there is hope for that person. Okay? To ensure so far as possible the reintegration of such persons into society upon release so they can lead a law-abiding and self-supporting life. Sad to say, this is only relevant to those who have hope to get out. Of course, it's another topic, another discussion, those who have life sentences with no at all option for parole. To this end, prison administrations and other competent authorities should offer education, vocational training, and work, and all the other services, with the hope of the PDLs and prisoners to be released. And this introduces Rule number 5, the prison regime should seek to minimize any differences between prison life and life at liberty that tend to lessen the responsibility of the prisoners or the respect due to their dignity as human beings. This now introduces us to the principle of normalization, which again, my colleague already introduced, that in the best practices of some prisons, most probably I think in Norway, I think in other countries, this is their main principle, the normalization principle. And what that also means is that any action that the prisoner or the PDL experiences that should allow as well the PDL or the prisoner to grow as a human being. Because in my observation, when I visit some prisons in the Philippines, I'm not sure if it's the same, when a visitor, an outsider, enters into the dormitory or the cells, the prison officer or the cell guard would signal, and there will be a chorus from the prisoners. Good afternoon, visitor. In all unison, the same sing-song manner, even though they're old or aged or young, it's the same good afternoon, visitor. Seemingly like elementary children. Similar like to school. It makes them back to elementary. Now the question is that what you want to teach or to make the PDL, the prisoner, does that help for that prisoner to go out finally and cannot think for themselves. They need now to wait for us for an order to move. Almost similarly like training a dog. Again, an extreme example. But does that kind of action does not lead for them to develop their own dignity and respect as human beings. And you'll see that in some instances where the prisoners or the PDLs, when they get released, they're so used to the very rigid environment of the prison that they cannot act and decide for themselves when they get released. So yes, the normalization principle will be very important. So how different is prison life from normal life? And it's easy for us to visualize this question when you can review your life, your day-to-day life. Can the prisoners celebrate birthdays? Can they visit a friend? Can they have conjugal rights, experience conjugal rights? Can they go to a barber, make themselves more beautiful or handsome? Okay. Can they change clothes or have their own self-expressions? Okay. Now, the normalization principle does not mean that everything should be normal. But what does it count? What are the limits to that normal life that we can give them for them later on to be reintegrated into society? And this is, aside from the many kinds of normalization, focusing on architectural design and space. One thing that me and my team are working on is the third place or space theory in prisons. Or the question, is there such a thing as a third place or space in prisons? Okay, so brief review of what the third place theory. So your home is your first place, okay, in a normal life. It's where you feel safe and comfortable, okay? Your workplace is your second place. It's where you contribute and make a living. When you say contribute to society, contribute to yourself by earning a wage. But the third place or places are the spaces that bring people together, allowing them to relax, socialize, and connect on a deeper level. They are the heart and soul of community, fostering a sense of belonging, creating a more vibrant and livable environment for everyone. And research will always say that the best way to create order or to remove violence in prisons is to have a sense of community. When you say sense of community, it's not just for the PDLs or prisoners themselves. The community means the whole prison, from the warden, jail officers, to the society surrounding the prisons and the prisoners themselves. Okay, that sense of community. And later on, I'll tell you a story on how that was able to be achieved in the last case study. And as well, one thing that this does not say, another thing about the third place is, as an individual, it's a place where an individual can choose where to be. Because the first place, you don't have a choice, more or less. You don't have a choice. Second place, again, you don't have a choice. But it is between those two places that, where will I want to be? What do I want to do in between those two places? So it's both community and self-growth as an individual. Okay, so third places are those informal, welcoming spaces where people gather, interact, and build relationships which are accessible, neutral, unbiased, encourage regular use, and fostering a sense of belonging and shared experiences. So this is from Ray Oldenburg, first place. So where is the first place in a prison? And we assume it's their dormitory or cell. It's where they live, okay? Where they sleep, where they feel they're most territorial. Okay? But sometimes in crowded prisons, even that prisoners, PDLs don't have. The second place okay, which are most probably depends on the prison, but these are the spaces are dictated and scheduled. And in the prison, it's very regulated. So there can be many, many, many kinds of second places. Okay? And including services from the schools, the education facilities, even the recreational facilities, if it is dictated to them that, hey, you play football or you play basketball now, that is not a third place. That is a second place. Okay. So the question now is where then in a prison environment is a third place? Where can the prisoners choose to be and do what they want to do? Sometimes the first and third place are the same. Okay? Your home is your first place where you feel safe and comfortable. Examples of ideas. So this is their first place. It's their home, even under the bed. Okay? Or sometimes they don't even have a first place. Okay? The second place are the services. Okay, from the classrooms, the library. Here at the top left, we have female PDLs doing bags, I think, for sale. So that's their second place. And the common third place in the Philippines is the basketball court. But again, there's a question. Is it actually a third place? Or what if the PDL or the prisoner does not play basketball? Okay? Where else? What else? Then everybody else is playing basketball. So is it now an effective third place? Sometimes the third place, as I mentioned before, is even in their cells. We have a female dorm PDL doing manicure, okay, in her bed. Because that's the only place, it's her choice to go to her bed and do manicure. And sometimes the third place is just sitting down your bed and doing nothing. What else can you do? One is eating more food. I don't know what the others are doing, but they're just staring out into space. Maybe dreaming, imagining. Maybe that's what they want to do. Okay. I'm not sure if you've seen this again, famous video of in the Philippines where PDLs. Sorry for the ad. Okay, hopefully it ends soon. Okay. There you go. So, is this now a third place or a second place wherein the prisoners have a choreographic dance number to the tune of Michael Jackson's Thriller? Okay? And this became viral. And some people said that this is abuse. Some researchers, some theoreticians, some people say it's their choice. They're enjoying it. Okay? But that is a question. There's no real right answer. Okay? But it happens. So is this a third or second space? Was it for them a choice or a dictated action to be in that place and to do that dance number? Okay. So this makes me go back to the applications of this in the last case study that I will be discussing. So, and this is one of the first projects that the UNODC did, which is transition planning. So we're going to do a case study in the new Marawi City Jail. This is area in the south where majority are Muslim. Okay? And this is a new jail. But again, because of the previous lessons from the previous case studies, that before the PDLs or inmates would be transferred to this new jail, everything must be, the hard drive must be reformatted, new programs must be brought in, viruses should be checked, okay, so that all of the mistakes from the previous jail will not be repeated. So it should be based on the Mandela rules, reclassification of PDLs. Like I think Professor Luis mentioned, the classification is also important, not just in space, or it dictates what space to use and how it is used. So the reclassification of the inmates to reduce as well gang influence and outside influence. Repurposing of spaces. This is very important because the original jail was only meant to be a male dorm. But then suddenly, the funding did not push through for the new female dorm. So this one had now to accommodate both male and female. And another complication here is that this is a Muslim country. And if you're Muslim and you're female, there are very rigid rules on exposure and interaction with males. They cannot be seen. Their skin cannot be seen. They cannot see eye to eye. And remember, this jail was not meant for that. Okay? So that's why this had to be very important, the repurposing of space. And mostly and most importantly, to introduce community partnerships. And what's nice about this is the land that was, this jail that was built on was donated by the Mindanao State University, which is a Muslim university. I think same like your university here, like it's beside, I think I'm not mistaken, Suzanne, right? Your jail here is right beside the university. So maybe, I'm not sure if you have programs with the jail, but same thing. So there are many programs and cooperations that the university had with the jail. I'm not sure if you can read it, but I will try to read because this one is an important historical event that happened in the city. Message me as well if I still have time. I still have time? No, it's okay. Yeah. Okay. I will hurry up. Okay. So one of the first to be attacked. So there was a terrorist by the ISIS into the city. Okay. And the first to be attacked was the original Marawi City Jail. And the purpose for them to attack the jail was they thought that if they could release the prisoners, that the Muslim prisoners will side with them. But what's so interesting, and this is we go back to the sense of community, the prisoners trusted more their warden than the ISIS terrorists. And what another instance of the sense of bond of the community is there in the jail days had 2 Catholic prisoners. And they knew if the terrorists would know that these 2 prisoners were Catholic, they would instantly kill them. So what the warden did is he gathered a bunch of Muslim prisoners and told them, guard these 2 Catholics. Make sure they dress like Muslim, make sure they know what to answer if they are asked. And they were able to save those Catholic prisoners. You see that the community bond was stronger amongst the prisoners and the warden than an outside force. And later on, that was going to be very important in the new city jail. So this is it. Okay, so if you want to learn more about the story, you can just scan the QR code. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay. So, brief description of the new Marawi City Jail. It's a jail which has newly opened in the city of Marawi on the Philippine island of Mindanao, symbolizing change in the Philippines penal system according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. The Marawi City Jail, which was built by the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology and inaugurated in May 2024, has been established according to the Nelson Mandela rules, which the rules define what are generally accepted as being good principles and practice in the treatment of prisoners and prison management in detention facilities across the world. So it's, I think, the first jail in the Philippines to have the plaque. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what were the challenges? Same thing, like the Quezon City Jail. There was pressure to fully move the inmates in the PDLs even before this jail was completed. And one of the main challenges was that this jail had no running water. And they were supposed to transfer all of the inmates with no running water. And we were there. The mission, the UN mission, the guests, the workshop, this is where we had the workshop, was there, and there was no running water. So even we experienced how it was in the prison with no running water, but we were lucky because we were only there for 7 hours and can go back to our hotel, air condition and everything. So, and no one knew what to do. So it was the UN with the UN officer. It's a good thing he had an experience in engineering and water to look for the water source. And the water source was actually outside of the jail, 2 kilometers down the hill. And that is already a security issue, but that's how it was. Found the pump, which was not working, so fixed it, and was able to somehow create some sort of water pressure. But imagine many days with the PDLs. There was initial move already of PDLs, again, because of the political pressure and other kinds of pressures. So there were already inmates in the jail without running water. And it's a good thing because it was raining. And the PDLs, with some prison officers, diverted the downspouts, okay, into the cells where the bathrooms were to catch rainwater. Okay? And some people, or even Filipinos, will say that's a positive thing about Filipinos, that we are resilient. We do not complain. We do with things. But looking back, that's not really a positive thing. We should not be happy with less than the minimum things. We should fight for more. Okay. Quick joke. No, we did not divert this water pipe. For those in engineering, you know what that means. Okay, that's the sewer line. So no, we didn't divert sewer line inside. Okay. So, okay, don't worry, I'm close. So, this one, so support the new Marawi City Jail. The main focus was to support rehabilitation and reintegration and not just incarceration. How to do that is we repurpose spaces to incorporate services and the change in program for the original design and purpose. Because the original design, there were no spaces allocated for the complete menu of services. They were just the basic classrooms, and that's it. But we wanted more. We wanted judiciary rooms, visitation rooms, which were none, okay, and others, aside from just typical classrooms, workshops, vocational spaces. And well, to be fair, what's nice about having so much more capacity in terms of dorms and cells, you can repurpose those spaces to other things. Okay, so yes, definitely space is good, but the intention of that space is more important. Okay, so the training of the staff to utilize a new facility effectively, and that means walk through, simulating all of the activities that would happen before the inmates and PDLs come in. Because remember, the jail staff, this is the first time that they will be experiencing the whole jail system. So you do not want to transfer the inmates and the PDLs when the jail officers themselves do not know the whole building. Okay? And the new systems that's going to be introduced in the new building. Oh, sorry. Lastly, classification was done before intake according to risk and needs used to assign into dorms. So even before the reclassification from high risk, low risk, from petty crimes to violent crimes was done, and oriented, the jail officers were oriented on how to deal with them before the transfer, because the common practice was none of this transition planning. New jail, transfer, that's it. That's what happened with the other jails as well. And this is another landmark service, okay? Repurpose spaces to include spaces for legal aid with addition of a designated courtroom inside the jail. The first ever registered official courtroom inside the jail. And what's unique about this is because this is Muslim Mindanao. There is what you call the culture of tribal wars. So sometimes the prisoners themselves can be targeted by assassination by people outside. So instead of the risk of bringing the inmates and the prisoners, high-risk prisoners, to the court, which can expose the public and the court to attack, you bring the whole courtroom into the jail. So this was an experiment. Okay? It's a good thing that the judiciary, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense agreed to try this out. Okay? So the Marawi City executive judge highlights the new facility as a symbol of progress and reform, a place where justice is not just a lofty ideal, but a tangible reality. Because another thing that this would hopefully solve is that this is a temporary jail for those inmates who have not yet been sentenced. And in the Philippines, there is a huge backlog of cases. So sometimes people here, inmates here, would be staying 7 years without being sentenced. So this is another way of fast-tracking the process. So it's not just about infrastructure, it's the whole judiciary criminology system. And that's what's nice about this. This is an interdisciplinary discussion and workshop because it needs really everyone, the whole community, and the criminal justice reform jail system to work towards one goal. So here, this is a workshop where it is participatory. We had to bring the whole community, the whole jail officers, to ask them, what do you need? What do you want to happen? And one thing that they forgot was themselves. We were so focused on the PDLs that we didn't realize that their barracks had no windows, was even less comfortable, had no natural ventilation as compared to the PDLs or the inmates. They forgot about themselves. Sometimes it happens. We're so focused on, the PDLs that we forget. And I think that was also mentioned by Professor Luis. Okay. Okay. Sorry. This is an important and last. This is the last slides. And I have to read this because this is an interview. Okay. So the jail officer who worked in Marawi before the siege was struck by the change in approach of the new facility. So he mentions, it overwhelmed me, he said. We were amazed with the equipment, the security system, and the spacious dormitories for detainees. The old jail had no specific programs for detainees and limited space. But now we have several areas to accommodate livelihood and educational programs. The Marawi city government has also established the first school inside the jail. So it's a fully fledged school with full-time teachers, okay? With 4 full-time teachers and principal to oversee education. So this will play a key role in supporting prisoners to gain new skills so that they are able to live better lives upon release. The Mindanao State University, so the partner university, also supporting the jail with student extension services, including legal aid, social service, Islamic studies, physical education, and agriculture. Students and faculty at the university are familiar with the impact of terrorism, having experienced a bomb attack that killed 12 students in December 2023, and getting involved in prison life has been a way to respond through a humane approach that supports peace efforts. So it was, the prison actually was a healing process or a healing infrastructure for them, which is very rare. It's rare for the community to see the prison as something very positive that helped the community itself. Okay? So how jails and prisons can also be a positive impact on the community. And we have another program officer from the UN Office of Drugs and Crime in the Philippines, where he comments in his LinkedIn account that jail infrastructure is about community planning and not just construction. Okay, so continuing to the interview. So today, Officer Ali is the Welfare and Development Officer at the jail, and has become all the more passionate about his career in the correctional service. So prisoners matter because they are still human. They need special attention, particularly those who were neglected by society. I believe that there is still a chance for them to make a brighter future for their lives. So human rights in prison design, hope for tomorrow. But wait, I have one more story. So remember me sitting down in the 15-hour flight. And here comes an ad in the screen. It was an ad for a luxury condominium, I think in Brazil, somewhere in Brazil. And it showed all the luxurious amenities, and the tagline was built for today. Wait, built for today, and where are you? Click. Hope for tomorrow. What does that mean? Why can't we use that tagline as well that was used for a luxury condominium? Why can't we use that tagline for the jails that we're going to design and hopefully help improve? Okay. With that, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to share our story.
Obrigada. Thank you, professor. O professor César mostrou um pouco do que nós temos nas Filipinas e, interessantemente, algumas semelhanças, mas algumas diferenças que me chamaram bastante atenção. Eu vou falar muito rapidamente. Quando eu comecei a trabalhar com o sistema prisional, com a arquitetura prisional, e eu conseguia entrar nos presídios e ficar tranquila, mais ou menos em 2001, 2002, depois daquela grande rebelião do Comando Vermelho do PCC, que foi uma rebelião orquestrada no Brasil inteiro,